On the 1st of August 2026, Venus transit into the sign of Virgo, and it stays there until the 2nd of September, a stretch of just over a month instead of the usual 25 days Venus normally takes to cross one sign. That alone makes this transit worth paying closer attention to, because Venus lingers here a touch longer than it usually does anywhere else on its yearly journey through the zodiac. It's important to highlight that these interpretations are based on sidereal or Vedic astrology, which considers a roughly 24-degree variance from the tropical zodiac. Virgo is not an easy home for Venus. Venus is the planet of love, beauty, comfort and connection, while Virgo is a sign built on analysis, correction and the habit of noticing what is wrong before noticing what is right. When these two meet, Venus finds itself surrounded by scrutiny instead of warmth, and this is exactly why classical Vedic astrology treats Venus as debilitated in Virgo, its weakest possible placement. The exact debilitation point falls at 27 degrees Virgo, deep inside Chitra Nakshatra, a nakshatra long linked with ego clashes and the difficulty of holding two people together once pride enters the picture. Because Venus is also weak at this very same degree in the divisional chart used for marriage and partnerships, the discomfort of this placement runs deeper than an ordinary debilitation, and it peaks specifically in the final stretch of the transit, roughly from the last week of August into the first 2 days of September, when Venus is actually moving through that Chitra portion of Virgo. The opening days of August, while Venus crosses Uttara Phalguni, and the 2 weeks after that through Hasta Nakshatra, tend to feel comparatively gentler, so the sharpest edge of this transit really belongs to its closing days. What does a debilitated Venus in Virgo generally bring? Relationships get put under a microscope. There is a tendency to notice what is missing in a partner rather than what is already good, and small irritations can start to feel like deal breakers, so this becomes a period where patience matters far more than usual, and idealism about love needs to be traded for realism. On the brighter side, Virgo is a sign of skill, service and precision, and Venus placed here tends to sharpen financial judgment, budgeting sense, and the ability to negotiate a fair deal, so money handled carefully during this phase tends to work out well even when love feels complicated. 2 more planets are shaping this transit and deserve a mention before we move into the individual sign predictions. Mars is currently placed in Gemini, and from there it throws its powerful 4th house aspect directly onto Virgo. Wherever this aspect lands, it creates a pull to control, claim or hold on to something, so through this transit there is an added undertone of wanting to secure love, comfort or money rather than simply enjoying them as they come. At the same time, Saturn, currently retrograde in Pisces, throws its 7th house aspect onto Virgo as well, and because Virgo and Pisces sit exactly opposite each other, Venus sends its own gentler 7th house aspect back onto Saturn in return. Saturn always asks for patience, discipline and realistic expectations, and when it touches a placement that is already delicate, quick results simply should not be expected. Anything genuinely worth having during this transit will need steady, mature effort rather than an impulsive decision. Mercury, as the ruler of Virgo, also plays a quiet but important role in how all this unfolds. Mercury begins this period in its own sign Gemini, giving the early days of the transit a clearer, more grounded feel. On the 5th of August, Mercury moves into Cancer and joins Jupiter there until the 22nd, and this stretch tends to soften some of Venus's discomfort, bringing better conversations, more optimism and a touch of genuine warmth to money and relationship matters. From the 22nd of August onward, Mercury enters Leo, adding more confidence and a livelier tone as the transit heads into its final, more intense phase. Venus represents love and activities that bring joy. As Venus transits through different houses for approximately 25 days, it signifies an increased inclination towards activities associated with that specific house. The final outcomes may vary based on the dignity of Venus in the birth chart, but the common thread is an affinity towards engagements related to the house Venus is currently transiting. Venus primarily influences the Moon and Mercury and is relatively susceptible to the influence of malefic planets such as the Sun, Mars, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. To accurately assess the impact of these transits, it is crucial to consider your Ascendant and Moon signs. The Ascendant sign offers insights into the timing of life events, while the Moon sign reveals how you will emotionally respond to these changes. Take into account the position of your current Mahadasha Lord in your birth chart, as it can shed light on how these transits will influence the recurring themes of your current Dasha period. This transit may manifest differently for each individual, and how they navigate this transit will depend on their personal charts. A more precise understanding of the impact of this transit can be gained by examining Venus's Ashtaka Varga score in Virgo. Keep in mind that the effects of this transit are contingent on Venus's interaction with the planets in individual birth charts. It's also worth noting that individuals currently experiencing the influence of Venus Dasha may feel the effects of this transit more intensely. To understand how this transit may affect you based on your zodiac sign and the houses it transits, let's delve into those specifics. For Aries, this Venus transit through Virgo lands in your 6th house, the house of daily work, health, routine, debts, and the small rivalries that come with ordinary life. A debilitated Venus sitting here does not switch off love, it simply drags it into the middle of your everyday grind, so instead of romance feeling soft and easy, it starts getting tangled up with chores, schedules, colleagues, and who is or is not pulling their weight. You may find yourself more critical than usual of a partner's habits, more aware of small irritations that would normally slide past you, and less patient with anything that feels untidy or half done in your relationships. Singles may notice that the people crossing their path during this month come with complications attached: a coworker, a gym partner, someone met through a service or a health-related setting, and the connection may feel more transactional than dreamy at first. On the financial side, this placement is actually far kinder. Virgo sharpens Venus's practical instincts, so this is a genuinely good stretch to clear a lingering debt, tighten a budget, or negotiate better terms on a loan or a service contract. Money that comes in through skilled work, freelance projects, or anything service-related tends to flow more steadily than money tied to pure luck or speculation. Mars is currently placed in your 3rd house of courage, effort, and short journeys, and from there it throws its forceful 4th house aspect straight onto this 6th house of work and health. That combination gives you an added hunger to win, to dominate a dispute, or to take firm control of your daily routine, your fitness, or an ongoing disagreement with a colleague or rival. Used well, this is excellent energy for finally sorting out a nagging health issue, disciplining your diet, or standing your ground in a workplace conflict that has dragged on too long. Used carelessly, it can turn a small disagreement into a battle of egos, especially with a partner, because the same drive to control can spill over from your 6th house matters into how you treat the people close to you. Try to channel this assertiveness into fixing systems and habits rather than into winning arguments for the sake of it. Saturn is retrograde in your 12th house of rest, isolation, and hidden expenses, and from there it sends its 7th house aspect onto the same 6th house that Venus and Mars are already busy with. Saturn's message here is simple: slow down and be realistic. Health matters, workplace disputes and debt repayment will not resolve overnight during this transit, and pushing for instant results will likely leave you frustrated. Give yourself permission to work steadily rather than urgently. In return, Venus sends its own gentler 7th house aspect back onto that 12th house, which softens Saturn's usual heaviness there and brings a quiet comfort to time spent alone, a longing to retreat from noise, or a sweet connection with someone far away, perhaps someone you know only through messages or calls. This is a good period for quiet self-care rather than public displays of affection. Since Venus also rules your 2nd house of wealth, family and speech, and your 7th house of marriage and partnerships in your chart, both of these themes get pulled into this 6th house story throughout the transit. Expect money conversations to come up within your relationship, or a spouse or partner to become more involved in decisions about your work life, your health regime, or an ongoing debt. Speak plainly and avoid sarcasm during disagreements, since Virgo's critical tongue combined with a testy partner can say things that are hard to take back. Mercury's own movement adds a helpful rhythm to the month. Until the 5th of August, Mercury sits in your own 3rd house in its own sign Gemini, giving you clear-headed courage and the right words to raise a difficult topic with a sibling, neighbor, or colleague. From the 5th to the 22nd of August, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 4th house of home and mother, and this is genuinely the sweetest patch of the transit, bringing peace at home, a softer mood indoors, and a good moment to repair tension with family. From the 22nd of August onward, Mercury enters your 5th house of romance and creativity, lifting your mood, adding some playfulness back into love, and favoring anything creative you have been working on. Health-wise, keep an eye on stomach, digestion, and stress levels this month, since the 6th house governs the body's daily wear and tear, and a debilitated Venus here can show up as skin irritation, sugar-related issues, or fatigue from overworking. A simple, disciplined routine will serve you far better than a drastic new plan started in a hurry. At work, Avoid getting drawn into office politics or gossip, since Virgo's fault-finding tendency combined with Mars's urge to control can make you say something sharp that damages a working relationship you actually value. If you are negotiating a salary, a loan or a service contract, this is a favorable window to do it. Just come prepared with facts and figures rather than emotion, because that is exactly the kind of precision this transit rewards. Overall, this is not a transit to fight against. Let Virgo's practical, service-minded energy work in your favor by tightening your finances, disciplining your health and clearing overdue tasks, while consciously keeping your critical eye away from the people you love. The last week of August, as Venus moves through Chitra Nakshatra towards its deepest debilitation point, is when patience will be tested the most, so this is the week to bite your tongue rather than say something you will regret. Handled with maturity, Aries individuals can come out of this transit with sharper discipline, better finances and a relationship that has quietly grown stronger through the friction rather than broken by it. For Taurus, this transit lands directly in your 5th house, the house of romance, creativity, children and matters of the heart. This is one of the more sensitive placements for this transit, since Venus already governs love for everyone, and now it sits debilitated in exactly the house that rules romance for you. Expect this month to bring a noticeably more analytical mood towards love. You may find yourself picking apart a partner's words, replaying small comments, or wondering whether the relationship is really as good as it looks on the surface. If you are single, someone new might enter the picture, but this connection is likely to feel more like a puzzle you are trying to solve than a sweep off your feet moment, and it is worth taking your time before deciding what it really is. Parents may notice a child being more particular, more critical, or a little harder to please than usual, and creative projects you are working on could feel stuck in an endless editing loop, where nothing quite feels finished or good enough. The upside of Virgo's influence here is real skill and precision, so anything that requires structured creativity, teaching, tutoring or careful craftsmanship can genuinely flourish if you channel your energy into refining rather than second-guessing yourself. Mars is transiting your 2nd house of family, speech and accumulated wealth, and from there its 4th house aspect lands squarely on this 5th house of love and creativity. This adds a strong pull to control how romance unfolds, whether that means pushing a relationship towards commitment faster than it is ready for, or wanting a say in how family money is spent on children, entertainment, or a creative pursuit. There may also be a competitive streak showing up around a partner or even around a child's achievements. This is useful energy if it is directed towards disciplining your creative output or actively pursuing a romantic interest with intention, but it can easily tip into possessiveness or an argument about money tied to pleasure and leisure spending, so watch your tone in these conversations. Saturn continues its retrograde motion through your 11th house of gains, friendships and social circles, and from there it throws its 7th house aspect onto this same 5th house. This tells you that romantic gains and creative rewards will come slowly and only through consistent effort during this transit, so avoid expecting a quick spark to turn into something lasting without real work behind it. Friendships or wider social groups may also feel a little distant or transactional for a while, less warm than usual. In return, Venus sends its own gentler 7th house aspect back onto that 11th house, which softens this a little, and it is entirely possible that a romantic connection or a creative opportunity actually grows out of your friend circle or professional network during this period, arriving quietly rather than dramatically. Since Venus also rules your own 1st house of self and personality, along with your 6th house of daily work and health, both threads weave into this 5th house story. Your sense of self-worth may feel unusually tied to how your love life or creative work is going this month, so try not to let a romantic disappointment or a creative block define how you see yourself. There is also a real chance that work, health routines or a service-related setting brings you into contact with someone who later matters romantically, or that stress from your daily schedule spills over into how patient you are with a partner or child. Mercury's path through the month adds useful texture. Until the 5th of August, Mercury sits in Gemini in your 2nd house of speech and wealth, favoring clear, precise conversations about money and family matters. From the 5th to the 22nd, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 3rd house of courage and effort, a genuinely encouraging window that brings warmth to conversations with siblings, and a boost of confidence to pursue what you want rather than overthink it. From the 22nd of August, Mercury moves into your 4th house of home and mother, bringing a more settled, confident domestic mood as the transit closes, a good time for small home improvements, or simply enjoying quiet time indoors. A practical word of caution for this month: since the 5th house also governs speculation and risk-taking, this is not the ideal window to gamble on the stock market, place large speculative bets, or make an impulsive investment based on a hot tip. Virgo's analytical streak wants you to research thoroughly before committing money to anything uncertain, and Saturn's influence confirms that patience will serve you better than a quick punt. If you have children, keep a gentle watch on their health and mood too, since minor stomach upsets or unusual fussiness are common under this kind of placement, and a calm, structured routine at home will settle things faster than fussing over every small complaint. The final week of August, as Venus edges towards its deepest debilitation degree in Chitra Nakshatra, is when romantic overthinking is likely to peak, so this is the week to talk things through gently rather than let silent assumptions build up. On the whole, this transit asks Taurus individuals to bring more maturity and less idealism into matters of the heart, to be patient with a child or a partner who seems harder to please than usual, and to trust that creative and romantic rewards built slowly and carefully during this period will hold up far better than anything rushed. Handled well, you come out the other side with a love life and a creative practice that are both more refined, and you carry that discipline forward long after Venus has moved on from Virgo. For Gemini, this Venus transit moves through your 4th house, the house of home, mother, property, and the emotional ground you stand on every day. With Venus debilitated here, domestic life is likely to feel less peaceful than usual for a while. You might find yourself unusually critical of your living space, noticing every little thing that needs fixing, cleaning, or replacing, and this restless dissatisfaction can spill over into conversations with family members, especially your mother, who may seem harder to please or more prone to worry during this period. Property matters, if you have any in progress, could move more slowly than expected or attract extra scrutiny before anything is finalized. The comforting side of Virgo's involvement here is that this transit is genuinely useful for practical home improvements, sorting out clutter, fixing something that has been ignored for months, or reorganizing your space with real attention to detail, so channel that critical eye into productive tidying rather than complaining. Mars will be sitting in your own 1st house, in Gemini itself, and from there its 4th house aspect lands directly on this same 4th house of home. This gives you an unusually strong urge to take charge of your domestic situation, whether that means pushing for a property purchase, insisting on how the household should be run, or asserting your opinion strongly with a parent or housemate. With Mars boosting your own personal drive at the same time, you may feel more energetic and assertive generally this month, but that same fire needs a conscious outlet, because forcing your way in family matters can easily turn into avoidable arguments at home. Use this energy to finally push through a home project you have been putting off rather than to win a battle of wills with someone you live with. Saturn is retrograde in your 10th house of career and public standing, and from there its 7th house aspect also reaches this 4th house, which means work pressure could genuinely eat into the time and energy you have for home and family this month. You may feel torn between professional demands and domestic peace, and Saturn's message is to be realistic rather than to try and do everything perfectly at once, since something will need to give a little. In return, Venus sends its own gentler 7th house aspect back onto that 10th house of career, and this is a real silver lining, softening Saturn's usual sternness there and bringing a more likable, cooperative image at work, smoother dealings with superiors, and a chance that your calm, agreeable manner earns you quiet appreciation from those above you professionally. Since Venus also rules your 12th house of expenses and distant connections, along with your 5th house of romance, creativity, and children, these themes get folded into the home story this month too. You might notice unexpected expenses connected to your house, a repair, a bill, or something related to a family member living far away, so keep a little buffer in your budget rather than spending right up to the edge. There is also a good chance that children, a creative hobby, or a romantic partner become more involved in your home life during this period, whether that is redecorating together, a child needing more attention at home, or simply choosing to spend more romantic time indoors than out. Mercury's movement through the month gives this transit its shape. Until the 5th of August, Mercury sits with Mars in your own 1st house, in its own sign Gemini, sharpening your thinking and giving you the confidence to speak your mind clearly, which is genuinely useful for sorting out any home-related discussion early in the transit. From the 5th to the 22nd of August, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 2nd house of wealth, family, and speech, a warm and optimistic stretch that favors honest, generous conversations with family and a more relaxed attitude towards money. From the 22nd of August onward, Mercury enters your 3rd house of courage and short journeys, adding confidence to your everyday communication and making this a good window for a short trip, sorting things out with a sibling, or simply feeling more sociable again. On the health front, since the 4th house also connects to overall inner peace and comfort, restless nights, mild anxiety about domestic matters or a nagging worry about a parent's well-being are common under this kind of placement, and the remedy is simple rather than dramatic. Keep your evenings quieter, avoid too much clutter or noise at home, and give yourself permission to switch off from work once you walk through the door. If you are planning any vehicle purchase or a lease renewal during this transit, double-check every document and clause carefully rather than rushing to sign, since Virgo's fine print energy is very much active here and small oversights now could cause bigger headaches later. As Venus approaches its deepest debilitation point in the final week of August, home tensions may peak briefly, so try to keep that particular week calm and avoid making any big property decisions purely out of frustration. Overall, this is a transit that rewards patient, hands-on effort at home over grand gestures, asks you to soften your critical tongue with family, and quietly improves how you are seen at work in the process. Gemini individuals who use this period to methodically fix what is genuinely broken at home, rather than chase an impossible standard of perfection, will end the transit with both a calmer household and a stronger professional reputation to show for it. Think of this month as a chance to build real, lasting comfort rather than a picture-perfect one. For Cancer, Venus moves through your 3rd house this month, the house of effort, courage, siblings, short journeys, and everyday communication. With Venus debilitated here, love and warmth need to be worked for rather than expected to flow naturally, and you may notice that expressing affection through words feels harder than usual. Texts get misread, a comment lands wrong, or you find yourself being more critical in conversation than you mean to be. Bonds with siblings or close friends could go through a phase of small friction, minor disagreements that feel disproportionately sharp, often triggered by something as simple as a tone of voice or a delayed reply. On a more encouraging note, this is a strong month for developing a skill or hobby with real discipline, since Virgo rewards patient, detailed effort. So if you have been meaning to get properly good at something rather than just dabble in it, this transit gives you the focus to actually follow through. Mars is currently in your 12th house, the house of hidden matters, isolation and things done away from public view, and from there its 4th house aspect reaches this 3rd house of effort and communication. This creates a somewhat quiet, behind-the-scenes kind of drive. You may feel a strong urge to control how a sibling relationship unfolds or how a skill develops, but the effort feels more private than outward, perhaps working on something alone, negotiating quietly rather than in front of others, or dealing with a sibling issue without involving the wider family. Short trips connected to this transit may also carry a slightly secretive or personal quality, a solo journey rather than a group one, or a trip made for reasons you would rather not explain to everyone. Saturn continues its retrograde journey through your 9th house of luck, higher learning, father figures and long-distance connections, and from there its 7th house aspect lands on this 3rd house as well. This tells you that the results of your effort and communication this month will not come quickly, and any hopes tied to sheer luck should be set aside in favor of steady, deliberate work. Your father or a mentor figure may also feel a little more distant, stricter or less available than you would like, so avoid taking this personally. It is simply Saturn's natural tendency to demand patience wherever it touches. In return, Venus sends its own gentler 7th house aspect back onto this 9th house, and this genuinely helps, softening Saturn's usual severity and bringing a small stroke of good fortune, a kind word from an elder, or unexpected support connected to education or a long-distance relationship during this period. Since Venus also rules your 11th house of gains, friends and networks, along with your 4th house of home and mother, both these areas quietly shape your 3rd house experience this month. Friends or a wider social network could play a real part in a sibling matter or a short trip. Perhaps a friend mediates a disagreement or joins you on a journey, and how settled or unsettled things feel at home will directly affect how much patience you have for these everyday effort-based matters. A peaceful home base will make this transit far easier to handle than a chaotic one. Mercury's movement through the month brings a genuinely pleasant middle stretch. Until the 5th of August, Mercury sits in your 12th house in Gemini, which can make communication feel more inward, private, or even a little draining, a good phase for quiet research or writing rather than public conversation. From the 5th to the 22nd of August, Mercury joins Jupiter in your own 1st house in Cancer, and this is the sweetest window of the entire transit for you, bringing a genuine lift in confidence, optimism and self-expression. So use these 2.5 weeks to push forward anything important, since the planets are quietly on your side. From the 22nd of August, Mercury moves into your second house of wealth, family and speech, giving you clearer, more confident conversations about money and family matters as the transit closes. A practical tip worth remembering here, since the third house also governs writing, messaging and the tools we use to communicate, this is a good month to slow down before sending an important email or message, read it twice, and remove anything that sounds sharper than you intended. If you are learning a new skill or preparing for an exam or a short course, break the material into small, manageable pieces rather than trying to absorb everything at once, since Virgo's method of steady, careful repetition genuinely suits this transit far better than last-minute cramming. Keep an eye on stress-related tension in the shoulders, throat or nervous system too, as the third house has a natural link to these areas, and a short walk or a change of scenery can help more than you expect. As Venus nears its deepest debilitation point in the final week of August, sibling tensions or communication misunderstandings may resurface briefly, so this is the week to choose your words with extra care. On the whole, this transit asks Cancer individuals to put in quiet, steady effort with siblings, skills and everyday communication rather than expecting things to feel effortless, and to lean on the genuinely supportive middle stretch of the month to make real progress. Handled patiently, you come out with a sharper skill, a steadier bond with those close to you, and a small but real stroke of blessing from an elder or a distant connection along the way. For Leo, Venus this month sits in your second house, the house of wealth, family, speech and the values you hold close. With Venus debilitated here, this transit tends to bring a more critical, analytical mood around money and family conversations, more so than in an ordinary month. You might find yourself scrutinizing every expense, worrying about savings more than usual, or noticing small irritations in how family members speak to you or about you. Your own words could come out sharper or more blunt than you intend, especially when discussing finances or shared resources with a partner or relative, so pay attention to tone during this period. On the encouraging side, Virgo brings genuine precision to money matters, so this is actually a strong window to sit down and properly organize your finances, track spending, cut out waste, or negotiate a better deal on something you regularly pay for. Family life may need a bit more patience than usual, but a disciplined, practical approach to shared responsibilities can smooth over a lot of the friction that surfaces this month. Mars is currently transiting your 11th house of gains, friends and networks, and from there its 4th house aspect lands on the 2nd house of wealth and family. This adds a strong urge to control financial outcomes, push for a raise, chase down money that is owed to you, or assert your opinion firmly within family discussions about shared resources. It can also show up as wanting to control how family wealth or a joint account is managed, which is useful if channeled into fair negotiation, but can easily tip into a power struggle if you insist on having the final word every time. Friends or a professional network may also play a role in a financial opportunity this month, so stay open to conversations that come through your wider circle rather than expecting gains to arrive only through direct effort. Saturn is retrograde in your 8th house of transformation, shared resources and sudden change, and from there its 7th house aspect reaches the 2nd house as well. This combination asks for real caution around borrowed money, joint finances, or anything involving someone else's resources, since results here will be slow and any shortcuts are likely to backfire. Avoid taking on new debt or entering a financial agreement hastily during this transit, and be prepared for family matters tied to inheritance, insurance or shared property to move at a frustratingly slow pace. In return, Venus sends its own gentler 7th house aspect back onto this 8th house, softening some of Saturn's usual intensity there, and this can bring a quiet sense of emotional support during a transformative period, or a small, unexpected gain connected to a partner's resources or a joint financial matter. Since Venus also rules your 10th house of career and public image, along with your 3rd house of courage, effort and communication, both these areas connect into your money and family story this month. Career-related decisions may hinge more than usual on financial considerations, and how confidently you speak up at work, or with siblings, will directly affect how smoothly financial conversations go at home. This is a good month to let your effort and communication skills do the talking rather than relying purely on charm, since Virgo rewards substance over style right now. Mercury's movement through the month shapes the mood nicely. Until the 5th of August, Mercury sits in your 11th house in Gemini, favoring networking, useful conversations with friends, and clarity around your goals and gains. From the 5th to the 22nd of August, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 12th house of rest and quiet reflection, a good stretch to slow down, review your finances privately, or simply recharge away from the noise of daily demands. From the 22nd of August, Mercury enters your own first house in Leo, giving your confidence, presence, and self-expression a genuine lift as the transit closes, a good time to step back into the spotlight after a quieter stretch. A useful practical habit for this month is to write things down rather than trust memory alone, whether that is a budget, a list of family commitments, or the terms of an agreement, since Virgo's attention to detail works best when it has something concrete to work with. If you have been putting off a difficult conversation about shared expenses with a partner, sibling or parent, this transit rewards having it calmly and factually, backed by real numbers rather than emotion, and you are likely to find the other person more receptive than you expect once the conversation stays practical. Be a little more careful with your throat and voice too during this period, since second house matters connect to speech, and Virgo's critical energy combined with Mars's assertiveness can make you more prone to snapping or straining your voice than usual. As Venus approaches its deepest debilitation point in the final week of August, money-related tension or a sharp family exchange is more likely to surface, so this is the week to think twice before making a big purchase or saying something you cannot take back. Overall, this transit asks Leo individuals to bring discipline and realism to finances and family life rather than pride or impulsiveness, and to let precise, careful effort replace the usual desire for grand gestures. Handled with patience, you come out of this period with genuinely tighter finances, clearer family boundaries and a stronger, more honest footing with the people closest to you, without needing a single dramatic gesture to get there. For Virgo, this is the one Venus transit that feels especially personal because Venus is moving through your own sign, your first house of self, appearance, personality, and the way you present yourself to the world. Venus is debilitated in Virgo, so instead of encouraging comfort and effortless confidence, it encourages refinement, improvement, and honest self-evaluation. While this can make you more aware of your imperfections, its real purpose is not to lower your confidence, but to help you become a stronger, more polished version of yourself. You may notice yourself paying closer attention to your appearance, habits, and the impression you leave on others. There can be moments where you focus more on what still needs improvement than on how far you have already come. Try not to mistake this heightened awareness for reality. Most people are far less critical of you than you are of yourself. Used constructively, this transit is excellent for improving your health, refining your personal style, learning new skills, or developing better daily habits. Think of this as a period of personal growth rather than personal judgment. Mars is transiting your 10th house of career and public reputation, casting its 4th aspect onto your 1st house. This gives you a powerful drive to reshape how others see you. You may feel motivated to work harder, accept greater responsibility, or establish yourself professionally. There is genuine ambition behind this placement, and people may notice your determination and work ethic. Mars can also make you impatient with your own progress or overly concerned with proving yourself. Instead of chasing recognition, focus on building real competence. The respect you earn through consistent effort will last much longer than recognition gained through impulse. Retrograde Saturn continues through your 7th house of marriage, partnerships, and one-to-one relationships while casting its 7th aspect onto your 1st house. This places additional emphasis on your relationships and the balance between your personal needs and the needs of others. If you are in a committed relationship, this transit encourages maturity, patience, and honest communication. Minor misunderstandings can become opportunities to strengthen the relationship if both people are willing to listen instead of criticizing each other. If you are single, Saturn favors quality over speed. Rather than rushing into a relationship, take time to understand whether someone truly shares your values and long-term goals. Fortunately, Venus also casts its 7th aspect back onto Saturn, softening Saturn's seriousness with warmth and diplomacy. Even when conversations feel difficult, there is a greater chance of resolving them peacefully through kindness and mutual understanding. Relationships built on honesty and genuine effort can actually become stronger during this transit. Since Venus also rules your 2nd house of wealth and family, and your 9th house of luck, higher learning, and father figures, these areas become closely connected with your personal development. Family conversations, financial decisions, or guidance from a mentor may influence your confidence and direction. Rather than relying entirely on luck, you may discover that steady preparation and practical effort produce far better results. This is an excellent period to improve your financial planning, Invest in education or develop skills that support your long-term goals. One of the greatest strengths of this transit is the opportunity to refine yourself from the inside out. Virgo naturally values improvement, discipline, and practical skill, and Venus encourages you to apply these qualities with balance rather than perfectionism. Whether you are improving your health, learning a professional skill, upgrading your appearance, or developing better communication habits, every small improvement contributes to greater confidence. The more you focus on steady progress instead of impossible perfection, the more rewarding this transit becomes. Mercury, your ruling planet and the dispositor of Venus during this transit, plays an especially important role in shaping the results. Until August 5th, Mercury remains in Gemini in your 10th house, supporting career progress, clear thinking, and productive communication with employers or senior authorities. This is an excellent time to showcase your abilities or make important professional decisions. From August 5th to August 22nd, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 11th house of gains, friendships, and professional networks. This becomes one of the strongest phases of the month, bringing valuable advice, encouraging friendships, networking opportunities, and gradual financial growth. From August 22nd onward, Mercury moves into your 12th house, encouraging reflection, planning, and quiet preparation before your next major step. Health deserves attention because both Virgo and the first house relate closely to the physical body. Rather than experimenting with extreme diets or sudden lifestyle changes, focus on improvements you can realistically maintain. Better sleep, healthier eating, regular exercise, and stress management will produce far better long-term results. Pay particular attention to digestion, nervous tension, and overwork, as these areas may become more noticeable if daily routines are neglected. A practical way to make the most of this transit is to avoid comparing yourself with others. Venus in Virgo often creates the illusion that everyone else is progressing faster or achieving more. In reality, everyone is dealing with their own challenges. Measure your progress against the person you were a few months ago rather than against someone else's success. Small improvements repeated consistently will create lasting confidence. As Venus approaches its deepest debilitation degree during the final week of August, perfectionist tendencies and self-doubt may briefly become stronger. If you find yourself becoming unusually critical of your appearance, career, or relationships, avoid making major decisions based on temporary emotions. Instead, recognize that this final phase simply highlights the areas where further refinement is still possible. Overall, this is not a transit about becoming less attractive, less capable, or less fortunate. It is a transit about becoming more authentic, more skilled, and more self-aware. By improving your habits, strengthening your relationships, investing in your personal development, and allowing yourself room to grow without demanding perfection, you can emerge from this month noticeably more confident than when it began. Venus in Virgo reminds you that lasting confidence is built through steady effort, genuine competence, and learning to appreciate your own progress one step at a time. For Libra, this transit carries a little extra weight because Venus is your ruling planet. Whenever Venus changes signs, you tend to feel its effects more personally than most. From August 1st to September 2nd, Venus moves through your 12th house, the house of expenses, foreign lands, solitude, spiritual growth, sleep, and the hidden parts of life. Venus is debilitated in Virgo, so instead of expressing itself through ease and pleasure, it works through refinement, introspection, and practical adjustments. This does not mean the month is destined to be difficult. Instead, it encourages you to discover peace in simpler, more meaningful ways rather than constantly seeking happiness from the outside world. You may become more private about your emotions or relationships during this period. Rather than discussing every concern immediately, you may prefer to process your feelings before speaking. If you are in a relationship, there may be moments of emotional distance, not because love is fading, but because both of you are thinking more deeply about what the relationship truly needs. If you are single, this transit supports healing from past emotional experiences before inviting someone new into your life. The 12th house often represents endings that prepare you for healthier beginnings. Financially, this transit deserves attention because the 12th house governs expenses. Spending may increase on travel, health, home comforts, spiritual pursuits, or helping family members. These are not necessarily negative expenses, but they can quietly accumulate if left unchecked. Fortunately, Virgo encourages careful budgeting and practical planning. This is an excellent month to reduce unnecessary spending, review subscriptions, and direct your money toward things that genuinely improve your life. Small financial improvements now can create long-term stability. Mars is transiting your 9th house of higher learning, long-distance travel, philosophy and father figures, casting its 4th aspect onto your 12th house. This creates a strong desire to take control of private matters or long-term plans. Some may push forward with overseas education, relocation, immigration or travel plans, while others simply feel the need to protect their peace and establish healthier boundaries. Mars gives determination, but trying to force results too quickly may create unnecessary friction. This energy works best when directed toward disciplined planning rather than emotional reactions. Retrograde Saturn continues through your 6th house of work, health and daily responsibilities while casting its 7th aspect onto your 12th house. Saturn reminds you that lasting peace requires discipline. Work demands or unhealthy routines may leave you physically or emotionally drained if ignored. Rather than seeing this as a burden, use the transit to build healthier habits that continue serving you long after Venus leaves Virgo. At the same time, Venus casts its 7th aspect back to Saturn, softening Saturn's seriousness with diplomacy and compassion. Workplace relationships can improve through patience, minor disputes can settle gradually, and health responds better to consistent routines than quick solutions. Since Venus also rules your 1st house of self and your 8th house of transformation, this becomes a deeply personal period of inner growth. You may quietly change your priorities, release old fears or realize that certain attachments no longer serve you. This is an excellent time for counseling, meditation, therapy, spiritual study or any practice that helps you understand yourself more honestly. Rather than withdrawing from life, you are preparing yourself emotionally for the next chapter. One of the hidden strengths of this transit is its support for spiritual development and creative work behind the scenes. The 12th house governs meditation, prayer, charitable service, research, writing and artistic work done away from public attention. If you work in design, writing, music, filmmaking, healing or any creative field, some of your best work may happen privately before being shared later. Likewise, those connected with international business, import-export, hospitals, charities, hotels or large institutions may find this period quietly productive even if progress is not immediately visible. Mercury, the ruler of Virgo and the dispositor of Venus during this transit, significantly shapes the results. Until August 5th, Mercury remains in Gemini in your 9th house, supporting higher learning, travel planning, publishing and productive conversations with mentors or your father. From August 5th to August 22nd, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 10th house of career, creating one of the strongest phases of the month. Professional discussions become smoother, senior authorities may appreciate your work and career planning becomes more optimistic. If possible, schedule important meetings, interviews or presentations during this period. From August 22nd onward, Mercury enters your 11th house of gains and friendships, bringing useful networking opportunities, supportive friends and gradual financial progress through professional connections. A practical way to work with this transit is to simplify your life. Create a realistic budget, improve your sleep routine, organize your schedule and spend time in places that genuinely help you recharge. If emotions feel heavy, avoid isolating yourself completely. Quiet reflection is beneficial, but meaningful conversations with trusted people remain important. This is also an excellent period for meditation, journaling, spiritual retreats or simply spending time in nature, allowing your mind to settle away from constant distractions. As Venus approaches its deepest debilitation degree during the final week of August, emotional sensitivity and unnecessary worry may briefly increase. Avoid making major financial or relationship decisions based purely on temporary emotions during those few days. Instead, observe what the transit is teaching you. Often it simply reveals where your energy, money or emotions have been quietly leaking without your noticing. Overall, this is far more than a transit about expenses or withdrawal. It is a period of quiet refinement, emotional healing and inner preparation. By managing your finances wisely, protecting your peace, strengthening your daily routines and allowing yourself time for reflection, you can emerge from this transit emotionally lighter, financially wiser and spiritually stronger. Sometimes the greatest progress happens away from the spotlight, and this Venus transit reminds Libra individuals that lasting harmony always begins within. For Scorpio, Venus this month moves through your 11th house, the house of gains, income, friendships and the wishes you are hoping to see fulfilled. With Venus debilitated here, this transit tends to bring a more critical, discerning mood towards your social circle and your sense of what you are actually gaining from your efforts. You may find yourself questioning a friendship that has felt one-sided for a while, noticing who follows through on their word and who does not, or feeling disappointed when a hoped-for gain arrives smaller or later than expected. Financial gains this month are unlikely to come easily or by chance, but Virgo's precise, detail-oriented energy genuinely rewards careful negotiation, skilled work, and honest effort. So if you are willing to put in the work, steady income growth is very much available even if it does not feel exciting or dramatic. Elder siblings or close friends may also seem a little more critical or distant than usual, and it is worth remembering that this is likely a passing mood tied to the transit rather than a real shift in how they feel about you. Mars is transiting your 8th house of transformation, shared resources, and sudden change, and from there its 4th house aspect lands on this 11th house of gains and wishes. This adds a strong drive to secure financial gains through joint resources, a partner's income, an insurance matter, an inheritance, or some form of shared money, and you may feel an urgent need to control how these resources are handled or distributed. This can work in your favor if you assert yourself clearly and fairly in a joint financial discussion, but it can also create tension with a partner or business associate if you push too hard for control over something that genuinely needs to be a shared decision. Saturn is retrograde in your 5th house of romance, creativity, and children, a placement that often asks for real patience and maturity in matters of love, and from there it sends its 7th house aspect onto this 11th house of gains. This tells you that whatever you are hoping to gain this month, whether financial, social, or simply the fulfillment of a wish, will need time and will likely be shaped by how seriously you are approaching your romantic or creative life at the same time. Rushed romance or hasty creative decisions right now could quietly slow down gains elsewhere, so bring the same patience to matters of the heart that Saturn is demanding everywhere else. In return, Venus sends its own gentler 7th house aspect back onto this 5th house, softening Saturn's usual heaviness there, and this can bring a genuine, quiet sweetness to a romantic situation that has otherwise felt serious or slow-moving, or a renewed, gentler connection with a child in your life. Since Venus also rules your 7th house of marriage and partnerships, along with your 12th house of foreign connections and hidden expenses, both these threads shape your gains this month. A spouse or business partner may play a real role in whatever financial or social progress you make, and it is worth including them honestly in your plans rather than trying to manage everything alone. There is also a chance that a friendship, gain, or opportunity this month connects to something or someone from far away, though hidden costs attached to social life are worth watching, since the 12th house's link to expenses can quietly drain money spent on maintaining a social image. Mercury's movement through the month adds a helpful shift in tone. Until the 5th of August, Mercury sits in your 8th house in Gemini, favoring a focused, investigative mindset that suits sorting out joint finances, insurance, or any paperwork tied to shared resources. From the 5th to the 22nd of August, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 9th house of luck and higher learning, a genuinely fortunate stretch that can bring good news, a stroke of luck, or encouraging support from a father figure or mentor. From the 22nd of August, Mercury enters your 10th house of career, giving your professional life a confident, visible boost as the transit closes. A practical habit worth adopting this month is to review your finances and your friendships with the same clear-eyed honesty. Ask yourself which connections genuinely add value to your life and which ones simply take without giving back, and let that clarity guide where you invest your time rather than old habit or obligation. If you are negotiating a salary, a freelance rate, or a business deal, come with facts, figures, and a clear sense of your own worth, since Virgo's precision favors those who prepare rather than those who hope for the best. Watch your circulation and lower legs too, as the 11th house has a loose link to these areas, and a little more movement in your daily routine can help offset the stress that comes with chasing gains. As Venus approaches its deepest debilitation point in the final week of August, disappointment around a friendship or a delayed gain may feel sharpest, so try not to make any final judgment about a relationship or an opportunity during that particular week. On the whole, this transit asks Scorpio individuals to be more discerning than usual about where they invest their trust and energy socially, to bring real patience to romance and financial matters alike, and to trust that steady, honest effort during this period builds gains that last far longer than anything that arrives too easily. For Sagittarius, Venus this month sits in your 10th house, the house of career, public image, and the actions you take out in the world. With Venus debilitated here, professional life may feel more scrutinized and less naturally rewarding than usual, even if you are working just as hard as ever. You might notice more criticism coming your way at work, whether from a boss, a client, or your own inner voice, and there could be a nagging sense that your efforts are not being appreciated quite the way you would like. Relationships with colleagues or business contacts may also feel a touch more transactional this month, less warm, more focused on getting things done. The genuine advantage of Virgo's involvement here is precision and reliability, so this is a strong window to build a reputation for careful, dependable work, to clean up a process that has been messy, or to handle a client relationship with real attention to detail rather than charm alone, since charm is exactly what feels harder to access right now. Mars is transiting your 7th house of partnerships and marriage, and from there its 4th house aspect lands on this 10th house of career. This adds a strong urge to control your professional direction, perhaps pushing hard for a promotion, a new role, or simply asserting your authority more forcefully at work than usual. A partner or close business associate may also become more involved in your career decisions this month, for better or worse, and there is a real chance of friction if either of you tries to dictate the other's professional choices rather than discussing them as equals. Use this energy to advocate firmly for yourself professionally, while being careful not to let ambition override fairness in a partnership. Saturn is retrograde in your 4th house of home, mother and emotional foundation, and from there it sends its 7th house aspect onto this 10th house of career. This tells you that career progress this month will be slow and will genuinely depend on how settled or unsettled things feel at home, since Saturn's restriction on your career house is really asking you to build a stable domestic base before expecting bigger professional rewards. Avoid taking on more at work than your home life can currently support, and be patient with a mother figure or your living situation, since this area may need extra attention or feel unusually heavy for a while. In return, Venus sends its own gentler 7th house aspect back onto this 4th house, softening Saturn's usual weight there, bringing a little more comfort and peace at home despite the underlying seriousness, and perhaps a small improvement to your living space or a gentler mood from a parent. Since Venus also rules your 6th house of daily work, health and disputes, along with your 11th house of gains and friendships, both these threads run through your career story this month. Daily work pressure, a minor health issue, or an ongoing dispute with a colleague could directly affect how your public image and career progress this month, so resolving a nagging workplace tension sooner rather than later will free up energy for bigger professional goals. Friends in your wider network may also open a door professionally, so stay open to opportunities that arrive through personal connections rather than only through formal channels. Mercury's movement through the month adds a helpful rhythm to your career story specifically, since Mercury governs communication and this is your career house transit. Until the 5th of August, Mercury sits in your 7th house in Gemini, favoring clear, honest conversations with a partner or close associate about shared goals. From the 5th to the 22nd of August, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 8th house of transformation and shared resources, a stretch that can bring a meaningful shift in how you handle joint finances or a deeper, more honest conversation about a long-term commitment. From the 22nd of August, Mercury enters your 9th house of luck and higher learning, giving your professional confidence and sense of purpose a genuine lift as the transit closes, a good window for a course, a certification, or simply renewed optimism about where your career is heading. A practical suggestion for this transit is to keep a simple record of what you actually deliver at work, projects finished, targets met, problems solved, since having this written down gives you something solid to point to if you do need to make a case for yourself, rather than relying on how you feel about your own effort in the moment. If a public-facing role or presentation falls during this period, over-prepare rather than trust yourself to improvise, because Virgo's fault-finding energy currently makes flawless preparation matter more than natural confidence. Keep an eye on your knees and joints too, as the 10th house has a loose link to these areas, and standing too long or overworking physically without proper rest could catch up with you. As Venus approaches its deepest debilitation point in the final week of August, work-related criticism or a feeling of being underappreciated may peak briefly, so try not to make any major career decision purely out of frustration during that particular week. Overall, this transit asks Sagittarius individuals to build their professional reputation on substance and reliability rather than charisma alone, to keep home life steady as the real foundation for career growth, and to trust that patient, careful effort at work during this period earns a kind of respect that lasts well beyond the transit itself. For Capricorn, Venus this month moves through your 9th house, the house of luck, higher learning, father figures, and long journeys. Since Venus is one of the more favorable planets in your chart, ruling both a comfortable and a powerful house for you, This transit carries a bit more significance than it might for other signs, even while it is debilitated. With Venus weak in Virgo here, luck this month feels more like something you have to earn through careful effort rather than something that simply falls into your lap. You might notice that a plan involving higher education, publishing, a long journey, or a legal matter needs far more attention to detail than you expected, or that your relationship with your father or a mentor figure feels a little strained, more critical or distant than usual. Faith and philosophy could also feel less comforting for a while, replaced by a more questioning, analytical mindset that wants proof rather than belief. The advantage here is that Virgo's precision applied to the 9th house is genuinely excellent for serious study, meticulous research, or careful preparation for an exam, an application, or a long-distance move, so channel any restlessness into getting the details right rather than hoping things simply work out. Mars is transiting your 6th house of daily work, health, and disputes, and from there its 4th house aspect lands on this 9th house of luck and higher learning. This adds a strong drive to control your own opportunities, perhaps pushing hard to secure admission somewhere, win a legal matter, or force progress on a long-delayed travel plan. There is real assertiveness available here, useful for standing your ground with a father figure or authority figure who has been overly controlling, but it can also create friction if you push too aggressively for an outcome that genuinely needs patience and goodwill from others rather than force. Daily work pressures or a minor health issue could also distract you from bigger picture plans this month, so try to resolve small practical matters quickly rather than letting them pile up. Saturn is retrograde in your 3rd house of courage, effort, and communication, and from there it sends its 7th house aspect onto this 9th house of luck and higher learning. This tells you that any real progress on a long-term goal, a course of study, or a legal or travel-related matter will require sustained, disciplined effort over time rather than a single burst of enthusiasm. Your own communication and courage, currently under Saturn's careful eye, will directly shape how much luck you seem to have this month, so speaking up clearly and putting in consistent daily effort matters more than usual. In return, Venus sends its own gentler 7th house aspect back onto this 3rd house, softening Saturn's usual heaviness there, and this can bring a little more warmth to conversations with siblings, a gentler tone to your own self-talk, and a touch of ease to short journeys or everyday tasks that might otherwise have felt like a grind. Since Venus also rules your 5th house of romance, creativity, and children, along with your 10th house of career, both these areas connect into your luck and learning story this month. A romantic partner or a child in your life may play a role in a decision involving further study or travel, and your career ambitions are likely to be closely tied to how much you invest in learning or credentialing yourself properly during this period. This is a good month to see education, travel, or a father figure related matter as part of your longer career story rather than a separate concern. Mercury's movement through the month adds a helpful shift in energy. Until the 5th of August, Mercury sits in your 6th house in Gemini, favoring sharp, organized handling of daily tasks, health routines, or a minor dispute that needs sorting out. From the 5th to the 22nd of August, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 7th house of partnerships, a genuinely warm stretch that favors honest conversations with a spouse or business partner and a more optimistic view of committed relationships generally. From the 22nd of August, Mercury enters your 8th house of transformation and shared resources, encouraging deeper, more confident conversations about joint finances or a meaningful personal change as the transit closes. A practical way to work with this transit is to break any big 9th house goal, an application, an exam, a long journey, into small, trackable steps rather than fixating on the eventual outcome, since Virgo's method of steady progress genuinely suits this placement far better than waiting anxiously for a sign of good fortune. If your relationship with your father or a mentor feels tense right now, try approaching them with a specific, practical request rather than an emotional conversation, since this kind of direct, useful exchange tends to land better than an open-ended discussion during this period. Keep an eye on your hips and thighs too, as the 9th house has a loose link to these areas, and regular movement will help release some of the mental tension this transit can bring. As Venus approaches its deepest debilitation point in the final week of August, doubts about your own luck or a tense exchange with a father figure may surface most strongly, so treat that week as one for quiet effort rather than big declarations about your future. On the whole, this transit asks Capricorn individuals to earn their luck through disciplined preparation rather than waiting for it, to handle relationships with elders and mentors with extra patience, and to trust that the meticulous groundwork laid this month, however unglamorous it feels, sets up genuinely solid long-term gains once Venus moves into friendlier territory. For Aquarius, Venus this month moves through your 8th house, the house of transformation, shared resources, secrets and deep, often invisible change. Venus is another of your genuinely favorable planets, ruling 2 important houses in your chart, so this transit again carries more personal weight than a typical house transit would. With Venus debilitated here, matters connected to joint finances, a partner's money, insurance, inheritance or anything shared with someone else are likely to need extra scrutiny and patience this month, more than they normally would. You may find yourself more suspicious or critical than usual about a shared financial arrangement, questioning whether something is being handled fairly, or feeling emotionally unsettled by a change you cannot fully control. Intimacy in a close relationship may also feel more complicated, with a tendency to overanalyze a partner's behavior or to hold back affection until you feel completely certain of where you stand. The genuinely useful side of this placement is that Virgo's precision is excellent for sorting out the practical, paperwork-heavy side of shared resources, wills, insurance policies, tax matters or a joint account, so this is a good month to get organized even if the emotional undertone feels a little tense. Mars is transiting your 5th house of romance, creativity and children, and from there its 4th house aspect lands on this 8th house of shared resources and transformation. This adds a strong, sometimes intense drive to control the emotional or financial terms of a close relationship, perhaps pushing for more clarity about where a romance is heading, or asserting yourself firmly in a discussion about joint money. Creative or romantic desires this month are closely tied to a need for security, so be honest with yourself about whether you are seeking genuine connection or simply trying to control an uncertain situation. Used well, this energy helps you finally address something you have been avoiding in a close relationship, but it can tip into possessiveness if left unchecked. Saturn is retrograde in your 2nd house of wealth, family and speech, and from there it sends its 7th house aspect onto this 8th house of shared resources. This tells you that any transformation involving joint money, an inheritance, or a significant shared decision will move slowly and needs to be handled with real seriousness rather than urgency. Family conversations about money may also feel heavier than usual, and speaking with restraint rather than reacting quickly will serve you far better this month. In return, Venus sends its own gentler 7th house aspect back onto the 2nd house, softening Saturn's usual weight there, bringing a little relief to family finances and a gentler, more diplomatic tone to conversations about money and values within the family. Since Venus also rules your 4th house of home and mother, along with your 9th house of luck and higher learning, both these areas quietly shape this transit. How settled your home life feels will directly affect your capacity to handle the deeper, more intense 8th house matters coming up this month, so try to keep your domestic environment as calm as possible even while other things feel uncertain. There is also a chance that a lucky break, a piece of good advice from a mentor, or an opportunity connected to higher learning helps ease a shared financial matter or emotional transformation during this period. Mercury's movement through the month brings a helpful shift in tone as the transit unfolds. Until the 5th of August, Mercury sits in your 5th house in Gemini, favoring clear, thoughtful expression in romance or creative work. From the 5th to the 22nd of August, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 6th house of daily work and health, a stretch that favors resolving a nagging dispute or health concern with genuine optimism and support. From the 22nd of August, Mercury enters your 7th house of partnerships, bringing warmer, more confident conversations with a spouse or close partner as the transit closes. A practical way to work with this transit is to put anything involving shared money in writing this month, an agreement, an updated policy, a clear record of who owes what, rather than relying on verbal understanding or trust alone, since Virgo's love of detail is genuinely protective here rather than merely fussy. If a close relationship feels uncertain, ask yourself honestly whether you are seeking reassurance because something is genuinely wrong or simply because change itself feels uncomfortable, and try to separate the two before reacting. This is also a reasonable month to look into insurance, estate planning or any paperwork you have been putting off, since the discipline this transit brings suits exactly this kind of unglamorous but important task. Keep a gentle eye on your reproductive health and lower back too, as the 8th house has a loose link to these areas, and stress relief through rest rather than overexertion will serve you better right now. As Venus approaches its deepest debilitation point in the final week of August, suspicion or emotional intensity around a shared resource or a close relationship may peak briefly, so avoid making any irreversible financial or emotional decision during that particular week if you can help it. Overall, this transit asks Aquarius individuals to bring patience and precision rather than fear to matters of deep change and shared resources, to to handle intimacy with honesty rather than control, and to trust that the careful, unglamorous work of sorting out joint finances and emotional clarity this month leads to real, lasting security once Venus moves on into calmer waters. For Pisces, Venus is transiting your 7th house from August 1st to September 2nd, bringing greater attention to relationships, marriage, business partnerships, agreements, and the way you interact with other people. The 7th house governs all one-to-one relationships, whether personal or professional, making this one of the most relationship-oriented transits of the year. Venus is debilitated in Virgo, so instead of promoting effortless harmony, it encourages honest communication, practical adjustments, and realistic expectations. Rather than assuming something is wrong, this transit asks you to strengthen your relationships by improving how you understand and work with others. If you are in a committed relationship, you may notice that small misunderstandings become more noticeable than usual. Both you and your partner may become more analytical, focusing on details that would normally be overlooked. While this can create unnecessary criticism if handled poorly, it also provides an opportunity to improve communication and resolve issues that have quietly accumulated over time. Instead of trying to prove who is right, focus on understanding each other's perspective. Relationships built on mutual respect and patience can become stronger because of the honest conversations this transit encourages. If you are single, this is not necessarily a period that denies new relationships, but it does encourage greater discernment. You may become more selective about the people you allow into your life, looking beyond attraction to evaluate compatibility, shared values, and long-term potential. Taking your time before making commitments is likely to lead to better decisions than rushing into a relationship simply because of temporary emotions. The 7th house also governs business partnerships, contracts, negotiations, clients, and public interactions, making this an important period professionally as well. If you run a business, work closely with clients, or negotiate agreements, pay careful attention to details before signing documents. This transit supports practical discussions, revising contracts, and improving professional relationships through honesty and fairness. Existing partnerships may benefit from clearer expectations, while new collaborations should be built on transparency rather than assumptions. Those working in sales, consulting, law, marketing, or customer-facing roles may find that better communication leads to stronger long-term results. Mars is transiting your 4th house of home, family, and emotional foundations while casting its 4th aspect onto your 7th house. This can create moments where responsibilities at home influence your relationships or business decisions. Family matters, property issues, or domestic stress may occasionally spill over into your interactions with others if not handled carefully. At the same time, Mars gives you the courage to address issues directly instead of avoiding them. The key is to communicate firmly without becoming unnecessarily reactive or argumentative. Retrograde Saturn continues through your 1st house while casting its 7th aspect onto Venus in the 7th house. Since Saturn is your 11th and 12th house lord, this transit encourages maturity, responsibility, and realistic expectations in all partnerships. You may become more aware of the responsibilities that every meaningful relationship requires. While Saturn can slow progress or make relationships feel more serious, it also helps build commitment, reliability, and trust over time. Venus simultaneously casts its 7th aspect back onto Saturn, softening Saturn's strictness with patience, kindness, and diplomacy. This mutual aspect supports relationships and partnerships that are built on honesty, shared responsibilities, and long-term commitment rather than unrealistic expectations. Since Venus also rules your 3rd house of communication, courage, and skills, along with your 8th house of transformation, shared resources, and deeper emotional bonds, this transit encourages meaningful conversations that strengthen trust. Honest discussions about finances, future goals, or emotional needs may initially feel uncomfortable, but they can lead to greater understanding and stability. If you are involved in joint finances, taxes, insurance, investments, or inherited assets, this is also a good period to organize paperwork and review important financial details carefully. Mercury, the ruler of Virgo and the dispositor of Venus during this transit, significantly influences how events unfold. Until August 5th, Mercury remains in Gemini in your 4th house, supporting discussions related to family, property, home improvements, and domestic planning. From August 5th to August 22nd, Mercury joins Jupiter in your 5th house of creativity, romance, education, and children, bringing warmth and optimism into conversations. This becomes one of the most supportive phases of the month for resolving relationship issues, expressing affection, negotiating agreements and strengthening creative or business collaborations. From August 22nd onward, Mercury enters your 6th house of work, health and daily responsibilities, encouraging practical problem solving and helping you organize routines that support both your personal and professional life. A practical way to work with this transit is to improve communication before expecting others to change. Listen carefully, clarify expectations and avoid making assumptions. Whether you are dealing with a spouse, business partner, client or close friend, clear communication will prevent many unnecessary misunderstandings. This is also an excellent time to review contracts, define responsibilities and create healthier boundaries where needed. As Venus approaches its deepest debilitation degree during the final week of August, sensitivity to criticism or disappointment may briefly increase. Try not to judge an entire relationship or partnership based on temporary frustrations during those few days. Instead, treat this period as an opportunity to identify what still needs improvement. Many issues that arise now are not signs of failure but invitations to strengthen the foundation of your relationships and agreements. Overall, this transit is about far more than romance alone. It encourages you to build stronger partnerships in every area of life through honesty, patience, and practical communication. Whether you are nurturing a marriage, starting a business partnership, negotiating an important agreement, or simply learning to understand people more deeply, the lessons of this transit can produce lasting benefits. By balancing emotional understanding with realistic expectations, you can emerge from this month with healthier relationships, stronger professional connections, and greater confidence in the people you choose to share your life and work with. As we conclude this episode, please keep in mind that these insights are based on the sidereal zodiac system used in Vedic astrology, which differs from the tropical system by approximately 24 degrees. These are general predictions. The real impact depends on your dasha cycles and your individual birth chart. For a personalized analysis or consultation, feel free to reach out. If you found this video valuable, please like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And now, you can also hype this video to boost it within the community. Your support helps this knowledge reach more people who may benefit. Thank you for watching. Stay aware, keep learning, and keep shining bright.